About a week ago now, I was browsing Amazon Prime Video looking for some background noise, when I noticed G.I.Joe Retaliation. I remembered watching the first live-action G.I.Joe movie in theaters. I don't actually remember anything about the movie apart from some vague train crash scene at the end. While I can guess now that Rise of Cobra probably wasn't very good, at the time I remembered it fondly. So I was a little surprised to find out there's a sequel that I hadn't heard of. Retaliation is confused. It doesn't have a message, and it doesn't know what it wants to say. The writers are like me in any sort of public speaking role. My mouth is open, but no words come out. I'm just waiting for it to be over so I can leave. Come to think of it, I felt the same way about this movie. Retaliation only exists to set up the next movie in the series. It's a cash grab, and it succeeded to some extent, doubling the budget in gross earnings. And gross is probably the best word to describe how Retaliation makes me feel, not only because I'm treated to Lee Byung-hun's abs from the privacy of my own domicile, but because he can't keep getting away with it! Retaliation got a 41 on Metacritic. Now, that would be sad enough on its own if its predecessor, Rise of Cobra, didn't also get an abysmal score of 32. How did they make a sequel to that? Never mind, we're not talking about how bad Rise is today. What makes Retaliation an affront to mankind? Let's get right into it. Retaliation opens to a scene where Team G.I.Joe infiltrates a North Korean camp to capture a Korean defector. We get these awkward moments.
Anyone ever tell you fight ugly?
Not from their backs, they don't.
It's just...
And new guy Flint breaking from the group to swap out the Korean flag with a Joe flag. Fast cut to a competition where he's competing with another Joe to bob for grenades? How idiotic does that sound? Dwayne Johnson comes over and gives Flint shit for defying orders, and makes some point about being a sore winner. Is this a setup for something later? Nah, sorry, all the setups happen in the last half hour. Channing Tatum comes over and they take turns dunking Flint in the water. Next we get some action fake out with Channing and Dwayne playing the Fortnite of 2013. Dwayne's kids come and go in the blink of an eye, and Tatum says this.
Not the first time you sent a girl running out of the room screaming.
Not the first time I've sent two girls screaming from a room.
Dude, completely inappropriate.
I'm just saying.
Completely.
So we've had our introduction, right? First some quips in Korea, and then some quips on the couch. We should be hitting some major story threads soon. Well, as the perfectly timed TV news segment shows us, there's trouble in the Middle East again. So, here's our first big action set piece where... Oh no, wait, they're quipping again.
In the immortal words of Jay-Z.
Okay, but now the mission has started, right? And it's gonna go well for a little while, but something's gotta go wrong, right? Well, no, actually. Apart from them tossing a nuke 5 stories indoors with nothing but a small parachute and video editing to catch its fall, mission goes flawlessly. So now there's gotta be some big story reveals, right? Well, after some more quips between Dwayne and Tatum...
Humidity, I say, is about 62%.
You gonna feed me the barometric pressure too?
That's on the rise. Like your panties.
You love my panties.
We finally get this scene.
Security's early.
This comes 25 minutes into the movie, and just for context, by the 25-minute mark of Winter Soldier, we've already seen the entire boat scene, helicarrier setup, a bit with a memorial and Peggy Carter, and we're halfway through the main antagonist introduction. Anyways, the helicopters blow up a truck to announce their intentions, and then start blasting. Flint starts tripping over his own 2 feet, so Tatum brings him over to another truck in the middle of the camp. I guess Duke is just a massive idiot. Like, he watched them target a truck not 20 seconds ago. Why do you think it's safe there? Anyways, he pushes Flint 5 feet and then dies in an explosion. The Rock, Flint, and Lady J all survive by hiding in a well that we've never seen before. I really hope you're starting to understand the absurdity of what's going on here. Personally, I think the movie would have been far more compelling if it had started right before the destruction of the Joes, or if that's too extreme, then just after, or even before the start of their second mission. Nothing relevant happens before that scene, and no character arcs are set up. It's just a waste of time. If you want to make the argument that these are new characters and we need time to get to know them, then I'd argue the bet between Duke and Dwayne was enough before the attack, and we could have spent far more time after the attack to get to know how this traumatic event actually affects them. Because apart from the death of Duke, they don't seem to really care about what happened. They have no motivation till this point, and even this motivation is lackluster and underutilized. Here's an example. There's a guy that appears alongside Lady J at the start of the movie. I'm gonna call him Donut Boy because I literally can't remember his name and it's nowhere in my notes here. Donut Boy dies in the attack on the Joe camp, or at least I assume he does because he doesn't appear again across the entire film. You're probably thinking, okay, but why should I care about Donut Boy? And that's exactly my point. Apart from the surviving 3 characters, the only other people to speak are Duke and Donut Boy. He's introduced staring down a sniper scope and causes the meaningless distraction at the start. Later, as they helicopter over to the second mission, Lady J refers to the two of them as designated marksmen, and Dwayne gives him a bullet to stuff in his mouth. It's implied that this is his first drop, but we saw him in the last mission. So they mean his first time rappelling? Why is this relevant to the movie? That's the last time that we see him. They took the time to give this guy a name. Mouse. That's his name. A role, distinguished marksman, and a flaw, pre-fight jitters. But then they just throw that away without ever mentioning his death or acknowledging his existence. It would have been one thing if it was stated that he was the new recruit or something, but no. Flint is the new recruit of the bunch. There's no way of knowing that if you didn't watch the interviews, but Flint is canonically the new guy on the team. In fact, the most boggling fact to me is that of the 3 surviving Joes, all of them are new to the movies. In the first movie, Team Joe comprised of Duke, Ripcord, Hawk, Scarlet, and Snake Eyes. While Duke and Snake appear in this one, the rest aren't even mentioned. Duke dies at the start, and Snake is off doing ninja shit. Apart from Jay being a marksman and Flint defying orders, only one of which is remotely relevant by the way, we know absolutely nothing about these 2 new characters. Dwayne becomes the new leader of the Joes when I had no clue he even outranked Snake Eyes at all. So they wander the desert a bit until an airport sneaks up on them, and they fly back to America. Meanwhile, in America, the president walks 5 feet outside the White House to a secret bunker where the real president is hidden.
Dad, Baldy, idiot.
Enough out of you, weak Harvey. Go clean up the chocolate stains you left in your mother's bedroom.
Wow, can you like to scratch?
Next time, take out his fat ass.
It would be my pleasure, sir.
Turns out Zartan captured and replaced him at some point, somehow, and has been ruling over the states for a little while. He demonstrates his disguise technology stuff, which I don't understand how it works, or why he's explaining this to the person he captured months ago. Zartan wants to know where Cobra Commander is being held captive, so they can perform a prison break. I'm going to unpeel all of the layers of what happens next, just so I don't have to keep going back and correcting what I said before. Zartan, pretending to be the president, accuses Snake Eyes of killing the Pakistani president, which is the first time we're hearing of the Pakistani president and his death. Zartan claims the Joes were attempting to steal the nuclear weapons for themselves, and that he enlisted the assistance of Cobra to neutralize the Joe threat. Why is Cobra not considered a bad guy after the events of the last movie? I have no clue, but it might have been explained if I had bothered to rewatch that one. Remember, we're only working off that train memory. The conference ends with Zartan calling for a meeting to discuss nuclear protocol across all nations. Meanwhile, Storm Shadow, pretending to be Snake Eyes, is restrained and brought to the facility where Cobra Commander is being kept captive. Coincidentally, the warden of said facility is a fucking moron, and skeeves me out just looking at him.
So deep, in fact, that you just crossed out of Germany into international territory, which allows me, certain jurisdictional freedoms.
He explains that they are so deep underground and close to the Earth's core that the facility needs to be artificially cooled by these vats. He then goes ahead and explains to Snake, aka Storm, which containers hold which villains, and begins prepping Storm for his container. When it's revealed that Storm was pretending to be Snake, they just shrug it off and decide to keep him anyways. I think they added this twist so we'd have some reason to understand why he brought the swords in, but Snake is also a highly skilled ninja and would definitely be comfortable wielding those swords. Also, how did the warden get those swords? In an admittedly cool shot later, it's shown that they're just Storm swords with a sleeve on the shaft. The warden claims to be a fan of both Storm and Snake, so he should have known that Snake is the single-sword samurai and Storm is the binary-bladed bandit. Never mind that. They take off all restraints to throw Storm in the container, and he just complies. Storm's plan to escape instead involves stopping his own heartbeat, which nobody in the facility found suspicious that the new ninja's heart stopped. They open the lid to pull Storm out and save him, and Storm repays them by pulling in a worker and killing the guy. The warden storms in and demands the soldiers shoot at the guy holding his breath in a vat of goo with a human body shield, and of course they comply. The container breaks, and Storm kills everyone. Reinforcements come, and despite the sharp weapon, no blood is seen. Probably wanted to keep that PG-13 rating. Storm saves Cobra, and they leave Destro behind. This is where part 2 of their plan is enacted, and Firefly shows up just to bust in the front and murder the remaining guards. Why didn't they just bust in like this to begin with? I have no idea. Warden shoots the cooling container and the facility starts blowing up. Storm gets scorched and is sent to the mountains to heal. Just a heads up, this is the 50-minute mark. Our trio has made it back to America and found the time to swap clothes and discard their weapons before strolling up to the hood. Homie lends them a car and an old gym to set up shop in. They begin broadcasting signals to surviving Joes and figure out the president isn't his normal self. They make a pretty good argument about his mannerisms are all different, and it's a good sign that something's off. This culminates in the fact that when somebody's hands are clasped, one hand is dominant and remains on top. If you swap this order, it feels immediately wrong and off-putting. I love this point for a few reasons, not least of which is that it's easily replicated by everyone in the theaters watching it, just as I assume you tried upon hearing me mention it. The next obvious thing to do is to go visit Bruce Willis at his home in the suburbs. Technically speaking, he's General Joe Colton, the first Joe, I guess. Joe gives the Joes the name of some Joe Schmo who's known to blow his load at poker. The trio jabate him with Lady J and drug the son of a gun. I guess this guy has some major pull at his work, because what happens next is going to take another round of explanations. There's some kind of banquet going on with the president attending. The president has upped the security with his own Cobra agents, by...
Get us close to him.
I guess Dwayne meant add a fake name to the electronic admittance list and forge a fake ID card. I'm assuming that they created a fake identity here, because otherwise the next part wouldn't make any sense. Jay walks into the party and gets interrogated for not being on their list. She is actually on the list, but in a blink and you miss it shot, she's under a subsection called last minute additions. Apart from that, Jay has an ID card, and as I mentioned, is on the list. So why the card decides to then run a facial recognition program on her, with cameras watching the guests inside the building I might add, is beyond me. Jay gets a hair sample from the president and begins analyzing it in her lipstick, I guess. Where they're getting this tech from after their camp got blown up is a bit questionable. As the hair sample analyzes, Zartan demands she dance with him, and it's supposed to be this really tense moment where the Joes are waiting for the results and you're supposed to think Zartan knows she's a Joe. But it all falls flat for a couple of reasons. We already know it's Zartan. We're not filled with the same suspense Dwayne and Flint are. And secondly, we know that Zartan doesn't know that Jay is a Joe, because it keeps cutting back to the nameless guard watching the screen pixelate her face over and over again. Well, Jay escapes and Dwayne tries to snipe Zartan from an alleyway across the street. I'm gonna bring this up one more time later, but remember that scene where Zartan was showing the president that he was Zartan? Cut his own face with a knife? Remember that? How is Dwayne's sidearm gonna kill him? Anyways, Firefly shows up and has a little tussle with Dwayne before escaping. I'm going to get back to their storyline in just a second. First, we need to go through what Snake Eyes was up to the whole time. So at the start of the film, Snake is doing ninja training with a new recruit, Jinx. She's the cousin of Storm Shadow, so Snake isn't a big fan of hers, but this is our first time meeting her, and she's done nothing untrustworthy so far, so we only really have Snake's intuition to go off of right now. Anyways, the next time we see them is at Cobra Commander's prison break. Snake watches the whole thing go down from a distance, when suddenly Jinx appears and demands to help on his quest of whatever he's doing. He has swords for her, I guess, but throws massive shade the only way he knows how. She can join, but he has no respect for her. They saw Shadows burn, so they know he'll be returning to the mountains for some good old-fashioned whatever this is. In the mountains, they do some sick Lord of the Rings montage and rappel down a mountainside. Good thing Donut Boy didn't have to endure this. Shadow is just suiting up when... I love how he actually tries to save one of them here. Shadow rushes into the hallway, and who else could be waiting but... There's some funky business with Snake shooting shurikens out of the sky, and not having any stray bullets or debris hitting the walls, but the actual choreography here is pretty good. Jinx of course needs someone to spar with, so she's fighting Granny Healer. The fight ends with Shadow choking Snake, and while it looks dire, Snake flips the script and traps Shadow's arms, allowing Jinx to drug him. I also really love this part, partly because that was a really smart play I didn't expect, partly because of the nod of approval Snake gives Jinx, and partly because of this little shoulder tap Snake gives Shadow after he's knocked out. Unfortunately, this is where I have to stop being nice. They beg Shadow and run to the bridge for an escape. A bunch of guards suddenly show up, and I need to ask, where were they before this? Snake throws Shadow off the bridge, and while we see Jinx clip him to a wire, the wire isn't present for any other shot, so it looks like he just magically connected by himself. Likewise with Snake and Jinx jumping before magically being connected to wires. Secondly, what are their wires connected to? We get the wide establishing shot earlier, and there's nothing for them to connect to. The guards follow suit and also shoot zip lines into the sky, jumping to a second zip line that they had somehow prepared in advance, I guess. When these 5 guards, count them 5, follow after, the 1st, 4th, and 5th all fall off. But in the next shot, there are 4 of them, and 1 dies there. But in the next shot, Snake is wrestling with one as Jinx saves him, and suddenly there are no others following? Then they move to another pre-prepared rope swing and make a pretty cool wall run to go catch the still falling Shadow Bag. If Pythagoras taught me anything, it's that this is the biggest load of malarkey I've ever seen. The rest of the guard posse show up and Snake yeets Jinx off the wall and starts an avalanche on himself. They either need a slow shot of him getting out of there before the snow reached him, or let it run and just have him be the only one remaining, but this swing away mid-avalanche shit isn't cutting it. The last scene before we're done with Snake and Storm's side story is where Storm is being interrogated by the samurai leader guy. They want to know what Cobra has planned and threaten to execute Storm if he doesn't obey. Storm focuses on the sword and makes the claim that it's the one that killed the last samurai leader guy, but it's not his sword. They determine he was framed by a master of disguises, Zartan. Shadow has resolved to work with the Joes, but he does not consider them allies. Finally, everyone is working towards the same goal here, stopping Cobra, or Zartan. This is really more Zartan's movie than Cobra's. The only thing really cementing this as a G.I.Joe movie is the relationship between Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow. Basically, everyone else could be part of the Care Bear Cuddle Bunch and it wouldn't mean anything story-wise. Flint, Jay, Dwayne, and Joe are all just generic soldier people with no real personality apart from a couple minor pseudo-character arcs, but I'll go over those at the end. Snake's gang meets up with the normies at the gym, and they carpool over to Bruce Willis's house to go raid his gun pantry, or gun cupboards, or gun couch? Did I mention how fucking stupid this movie is yet? So Dwayne summarizes the plan for everyone and hands out rolls to people, and they get on their way. The plan is to interrupt Zartan's nuclear weapons conference and steal their weapon of mass destruction briefcase controls. So we're at the conference, and this guy claims the world is actually a safer place if we all had nukes, which I don't even want to get into right now, but Zartan reaffirms that he wants 0 nukes in the world. And to really drive it home, he claims that anyone who doesn't participate in his nuke-free world will be considered declaring war and nuked as punishment. All 8 of the world leaders refuse to comply, so Zartan declares war on
You and you and you and you and you and you.
So Zartan launches his nukes and starts playing Flappy Bird. As a side note, he launches one bird in the worst location and claims high score. So it's canonical that Zartan is a gamer. The other countries, pissed as shit, decide to launch their nukes. This not only includes nuking America, where they are currently, but also nuking each other for some reason. But Zartan then goes ahead and cancels his nukes, disarming them and blowing them up midair. Monkey see, monkey do, I guess, because the rest of the countries just follow suit and disable their nukes. I don't know why any of their nukes have remote disarm options, and it was extremely bold of Zartan to assume any of them did. After all nukes are disposed of, they bring out their weapon of mass destruction and drop a tungsten rod on London. That really happened. In this universe, London is fucking destroyed, and the Eurasian tectonic plate is shattered at this point. And this is the reaction that move got. Blank stares from uninterested people. Storm Shadow smacks the table a few times before revealing his status as a double agent and attacking Cobra Commander. Everything pops off at this point. Cobra tells Firefly to get the briefcase and drop all the rods, and Dwayne reveals his role in the plan, which is to drive the tank that Bruce was keeping in his garage and blow up Cobra's tank's betterer. This bit is all fluff. Dwayne gets into shootout with these two other tanks, and despite them having combined line of sight around this entire shed, Dwayne is able to lose them, come crashing through the shed, blow up one of the tanks, and be safe enough that we can cut away for a while. Storm fights off Zartan and a nameless red ninja in this dank tunnel. Firefly shows up and takes the briefcase from Zartan and dips. Zartan takes a sword to the chest, and once again, I need to ask why his nanite suit camouflage thing doesn't protect him here. Bruce and Jay fight their way into the President's bunker, and is that Jaime Lannister? Kind of a neat infiltration idea, but why were they willing to risk the President's life right here?
I said stand down!
Then there's this absolutely useless scene of Dwayne driving for 5 seconds, just so we can visually see him acknowledging that the President was saved. Cobra Commander just dips in a helicopter, never to be seen again. Then we cut to Dwayne in a somehow trashed tank, gunning down Firefly with a not-so-mounted turret. Firefly escapes on a speedboat into the grand open ocean, right? Well, actually, there's a stealth bridge there, and actually they're right at the other end of the bridge, because they didn't actually want an entire boat section. It only lasted 30 seconds. So Firefly and Dwayne punch each other with loaded guns for a bit and can't shoot each other in what are essentially just narrow hallways. Finally, Firefly gets choked out and Dwayne disables the tungsten rods, which makes him blow up from bottom to top in blue fire in space. Firefly tries to pull one more trick out of his trousers, but Dwayne has him outsmarted this time. Suddenly, the entire cast is on the same side of the beach, and they do this slow motion walk into a fade out to remind you, Dwayne has kids that we forgot about since the start of the movie. Bruce gives some of the most hollow praise I could ever imagine.
Lynn, great job.
And the movie ends. Now, I've got 7 pages of paragraphs thicker than Dwayne's thighs, dictating the story and a handful of my major gripes, but we've still got a little ways to go here. Let's start by recapping some of the things I liked and couldn't quite fit above. In the very first scene, Dwayne uses these fence-melting glove things that are really cool. This whole science lesson about REM sleep.
Did you know that during REM sleep, the human body produces a neurochemical which paralyzes every muscle in the body but the heart and the eyes? This prevents us from acting out our dreams. We have injected both of these men with a synthetic version.
Shadow gives this speech about being so filled with hate that you don't notice it anymore.
It's possible to feel so much hate. You stop feeling it at all. Like a fish not knowing it's in water.
Bruce's gun closet code is 1776. When Dwayne blows up Firefly's bike, it cracks the helmet a bit, and Firefly rips it off by the crack. The tungsten rod weapon is actually insanely cool. Lastly, the speech from the beginning about Joe's fighting like a fist gets referenced after Dwayne strays from the plan.
G.I.Joe's a fist.
Us?
With the knuckles. How do we strike? Together. Finger strays, gets broken.
Flint throws it back into Dwayne's face.
You want to remind me how knuckles are supposed to strike again? Together? Those are your words.
I had a shot in that too.
I don't give you that! You went rogue!
I'll do it again.
Yeah?
Unfortunately, even that point gets undermined by a few things. Dwayne was right to try and kill Zartan when he had the chance. He had no reason to expect Firefly would sneak up on him, and they had no clue what Zartan was planning, or when the next opportunity would arise. Also, despite his big talk about morality and being the bigger person in Victory,
You know, in Victory, we should be gentlemen.
Dwayne is easily one of the biggest assholes in the movie. The best example of this being when he cheated during the competition with Tatum, and then claimed that he won.
How's your heart rate?
That is not gonna count. I get to go again because you talked.
You pull a trigger. Now I pull a trigger.
That's not gonna count. Cheater?
I bought my little girls a karaoke machine, and they love singing on it all night long.
Speaking of that big-ass gun, why does Bruce say something a little more your size
He's actually thinking about something a little more your size.
right after we see that same big-ass gun, but then give him the tank instead? He didn't even use the tank for anything relevant, just blowing up Cobra tanks that we didn't know about until the final action sequence. He even uses the big gun as a weapon to stop Firefly. It's all right there. You just missed the opportunity. I've got more missed opportunity examples for later, but that big gun progression scene is the closest thing Dwayne has to an actual character arc, apart from killing Firefly. Like I mentioned before, Dwayne and the others are new to the movies, and so to have them care about Duke's death, they spent those 3 intro scenes trying to convince us that Dwayne and Tatum are best buds. I suppose it works well enough for the two of them, but as for Flint and Jay, they aren't so lucky. When Duke dies, Dwayne goes full sicko mode on Flint, exclaiming about fallen brothers and friends.
There's nothing left here.
That's not what he meant. He meant brothers. That's not what he meant.
We even go so far as to see Dwayne take Duke's dog tags. And even though you can't see any other bodies in the post-destruction camp shot, Dwayne has a whole tub of dog tags by the time they make it to the house in the suburbs. That's trailing off topic. The point is that Dwayne vows to kill whoever's behind the attack, and after claiming that the president is the only one with resources to pull that off, they kick off the investigation into him. When it's revealed that he's actually Zartan, Dwayne makes the call to try and assassinate him. Flint calls Dwayne out for diverging from the plan, and Dwayne responds that he has to kill Duke's killer.
Told you I was gonna find the man who did this. I was gonna kill him.
Coincidentally, Firefly is right behind him, and at the end of their kerfuffle,
When will you realize today's the day? It's the face all those pretty little Joes had in the desert when I lit them all up like fireworks.
takes credit for being the one to blow up the camp. But when the final confrontation is just people missing their shots from 5 feet away in slow motion remote detonation with Windows Movie Maker effects over top, it severely undercuts the emotional payoff you spent the whole movie building towards. Flint is no better. He's the rookie on the team, and that's of course irrelevant to the movie. He's the rogue agent who breaks from the team to do his own thing, and when the movie needs to develop his relationship with Duke, they start by having Duke drown the poor bastard. That was because of his flag stunt at the start, but in the very next mission he breaks again, and they don't bother punishing him. Then when the attack on camp starts, Flint isn't disobeying orders or anything. He was actually listening to another soldier telling him to move when he got knocked to the ground. If he was getting cocky and tried to get off some more shots or something, and then Duke had to bail him out, that would be a different story. But as it stands, Flint was following orders, and Duke was the one who led them both to the truck, and then pushed Flint away at the explosion. Duke's death is 100% his own fault. This was another missed opportunity to give Flint a reason to care about the story.
Conrad Hauser, Duke, your captain. Tell me one thing you know about him.
Great soldier. Better friend.
And he saved my life, sir.
While Dwayne is bloodthirsty for revenge, Flint could be looking for redemption. He could be looking to atone for the fact that his actions cost another person's life. Hell, you could have made Dwayne blame Flint for the death of Duke. I feel like that would have added to Dwayne's arc as well by giving him a flaw he can overcome. That would help him grow into a proper leader like Duke wanted.
And if you win?
You have to take your next promotion.
You could argue that because Flint doesn't stray from the group again across the whole movie, that he's been affected by the death of Duke and has changed because of it. I'd call that horseshit and a terrible excuse. The viewers need something a little more than just an immediate absence of a character flaw, and it needs to be a struggle that they overcome, otherwise it's not satisfying. Lady J's arc isn't satisfying either. To start with, her arc only begins after they confirm that the president is Zartan, attempt to kill him, and Storm Shadow's interrogation scene. Chronologically, it happens right after Flint gets mad at Dwayne, but the way these scenes are edited, Flint doesn't get mad on the street after they chase off Firefly. He waits the whole ride back, lets Jay stitch up Dwayne, and then barges in to chew off his head. But never mind that, this is Jay's scene. Her father was a sexist military man. He didn't think women could be soldiers, and she enlisted just to spite him. It's ironic then that during this speech, Flint is watching her undress through the reflection on the TV. This arc starts an hour and 20 minutes into the movie, literally just before they meet up with Snake and get armed at Mr. Willie's house.
Nice.
The closest thing to a progression that this arc has is the tandem Brenda gag, where Brucey refuses to learn her name.
I'll take 2 cases of Thin Mints and a box of Chuckalucks.
General Colton, if I may.
Shut your mouth, Brenda. Brenda, hand me that pen.
Girl Scout to secretary. Amazing. Name's not Brenda.
It's just a pen.
By the time the final battle rolls around, Bruce specifically asks her to help him save the president.
Brenda's with my team.
Does Brenda get a vote? You need a pen.
I need your help.
And at the end ceremony, he mentions that he knew Jay's father. Her smile fades at the mention of her father, and Bruce gives some bullshit line about how her father would be proud of her. I'm not sure how brain dead the writers think we are, but Jay's dad died before she could outrank him, and as far as I'm concerned, dead people can't change their opinions. It's not like we have any reason to believe that he would anyways. Having Bruce be proud of you is one thing, but don't try to bullshit me into thinking her dad would be. You could have had the conversation about Jay's dad be with Bruce. At least then he'd have a reason to mention her dad. Then at the ceremony, Bruce could have said something along the lines of, "You don't need to live in your dad's shadow, you're twice the person he ever was, and for what it's worth, I'm proud of you." Or something other than introducing a canonically sexist G.I. Joe and then lying about his beliefs. Granted, to have time for Jay and Bruce to build that connection, they should have introduced Bruce far sooner into the movie. Right now he's introduced just shy of the 1 hour mark, about halfway through the movie. Remember when Dwayne said,
The only one I trust out there is Snake Eyes.
Or,
Stoop's no angel, but he is family and we can trust him.
and then,
We have to assume that there's no one we can trust.
There is one man. He's the reason we call ourselves Joes.
why didn't they just skip the Hood meetup and go straight to the suburbs? The Hood scene takes place at the 50-minute mark, which is just 5 minutes before they go to Bruce anyways. You could have had 5 more minutes of runtime dedicated to character development, and instead you just spent it on a boxing arena that never gets used. The best character arc, by far, is the one for Storm Shadow. It's pretty easy to give him that honor, however, when everyone else is missing one. Snake has a little something, but Storm still kills it the most. He's also got a story that involves betrayal, false blame, the loss of a friend, the birth of an enemy, drowning in hatred, and conflicting emotions. He has so much to work with, and so much screen time dedicated to exploring it. Even the actor consistently kills it in every scene. He's treated as a villain, and has some fantastic lines to reinforce that perception.
I want you to pine. I want you to ache for what once was and will never be again. I want you to doubt that there was ever a word for escape. Welcome to hell.
You have no idea.
Welcome to hell.
But he also tries to save a lackey. He's not pure evil. There are shades of grey. This is where you need to bring up Cobra Commander. Hell, even Cobra as an organization. They are pure evil, and there's no getting around that. I get it's based off a cartoon show and you have some restrictions, but the blanket good versus evil motif is incredibly limiting. Comic book movies have proved that they can have more complex narratives, where morality is called into question. In Retaliation, not once do the Joes, or even Snake Eyes, question if what they're doing is wrong. The only person to consider their actions and place in the world is Storm Shadow. Okay, so I've been dancing around it, but I think I have enough to say where we can actually analyze Storm's arc. After the last movie, both Storm and Zartan are the only ones who are free. At this point, he's still devoted to Cobra's cause, so he infiltrates the prison to bust the commander out. One small thing they could have done to fix the sequence, by the way, is have Storm visibly sabotage the container he's put into, and hold his breath, waiting for the bulk of the guards to leave before breaking out on his own. This could have been a callback to the bobbing for grenades bit, where Jay states the average man can hold their breath for 90 seconds. Anyways, Storm kills everyone and frees Cobra Commander. This shockwater thing could have been cool if Storm wasn't wearing thick-ass rubber sole boots. They leave Destro behind for some reason, so I guess he's canonically dead too.
You're out of the band.
Storm gets scorched, but it's not because of Cobra or anything. Heck, it's not even because of Firefly. Storm has no beef with Cobra as a whole, exclusively Zartan. So he heads to the mountains and gets healed, but then he also gets captured by Snake and Jinx. Jinx is mentioned to be his cousin, which is the sole reason Snake Eyes doesn't trust her. But Jinx and Storm don't interact apart from the time she drugged him and the end of the movie. As it stands, I'm not sure we can fit in any more scenes between Storm and Jinx, so I might just say we leave that as is, or change the script so that Jinx isn't related to Storm at all. You could easily come up with another reason for Snake to distrust her. This would help at the end for when Snake offers his sacred blame to Storm Shadow. After Storm kills Zartan, he hands the sword off to Jinx, which is fine if he said something like, make sure this gets back to Snake, you know? Some way to show that Storm forgives Snake, the same way Snake forgave Shadow by handing him the sword. Instead, as it plays out, Storm hands the sword off to Jinx, and then turns around and walks straight past Snake. Snake is right there. Why wouldn't you return the sword to him? Instead, Jinx hands the blade back to Snake, and he lets her keep it. Real quick here, Snake's arc is that he didn't trust Jinx, and then she asked to join him on the hunt for Storm Shadow, so Snake threw her some swords on the ground as disrespect. Then they captured Storm, and he gives a nod of approval. That's about where it ends, but that's still enough to make my next suggestion work. If you still wanted Jinx to have the sword by the end, have Storm return the blade to Snake and have Snake pass it on to Jinx, showing he trusts her. This then also mirrors the beginning when he threw her swords on the ground. They're so close to something emotional and meaningful. I'm too many pages into this already, so we'll wrap up by talking about the theme of the movie. Now, I struggled finding a theme at first, but having written all of this out, I think it's pretty clearly trust. Snake learned to trust Jinx and Storm. After the attack, Dwayne only trusts Snake, Stoop, and Bruce Willis. Bruce put his trust in Brenda to have his back during the final encounter, although, seriously, they set up the bendy flying bullets in the nuke mission. Why didn't that come back as a way to save the president without having to shoot him? Here's one thing you might not have expected. Cobra Commander trusted Storm so much to save him.
Storm Shadow. Never a doubt.
And after the bombing, when Zartan warns Cobra Commander that 3 Joe survived, the commander snaps back,
Can I trust you with nothing?
I don't know if it was intentional, in fact I highly doubt it was, but trust plays a major role in Retaliation. Much like everything else, I feel it was underutilized and could have been developed more. Good and bad movies alike get attention and discourse surrounding them, but mediocre movies don't often get the time of day. Nothing hurts me more than seeing missed potential, what could have been. Retaliation has a lot of stupid things, like 3 pages of notes of stupid things. But if the story had a little more thought put into it, then I feel like those other issues would start fading away. The editing certainly wouldn't be as choppy as it is now. Good God. Well, this has been my critical analysis of G.I.Joe Retaliation. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you now understand why I had to talk about this. Make sure you like and subscribe, all those typical YouTube things. See ya. Joe gives the Joes the name of some Joe Schmo who... oh no.